Hello, my little chickadees. So sorry I'm a little bit late. I was talking. Not gonna lie, I was talking to Tina. We were chit-chatting and making plans and what have you, and yes. Anyway, so today, if you recall, we're going to talk about fibers and weights and yardage, and how that translates into projects, because I think that's a really important topic that we don't address enough for, doesn't really matter what you do, crochet, knitting, weaving, spinning, any kind of fiber art. If you're doing any kind of fiber art, it's really important to understand your fiber's properties and weights and how that translates into volume, because volume versus weight, and then how that translates into yardage. So I want to talk about that, and I suppose I should just dive into it, and then we'll go into some other things as well, because I can never stay on just one topic. So when you think about fiber, and we talk about a lot of different things when it comes to spinning and knitting and crochet, right? So we talk about acrylic, and we talk about wool. Of course, wool has a lot of different categories to it. And silk, and there's Angora, and there's camel, and there's just all these different fibers out there that we work with and we use. And that's fabulous, and it's really fun to play with different things. But it also means that when we talk about having 400 yards of something, that the weight might be different and the diameter of the yarn might be different, but we can still do a lot with 400 yards. So that's part of what I wanted to talk about today. Wool is a really broad category. It touches on a lot of different kinds of sheep. Some sheep have a very fine diameter. Some sheep have a very large diameter to their wool. And what that means is that if you take an ounce of fiber by volume, if you have a very fine fiber, you're going to have a very large volume. And if you have a very thick fiber, then you're going to have a very small volume, because it weighs more. There's more fiber to that's really what I want here. There's more weight in a larger diameter fiber, okay? So to get to, 4 ounces of, like, what have I got around here? To get to 4 ounces of something like, what was this? This was a merino, very, very fine merino. You're going to have a lot more fiber to actually spin versus 4 ounces of cotton. Cotton weighs more, so you aren't going to have as much cotton to spin. And there are things that we can do to counteract that, like spinning woolen versus worsted. Worsted, because it's packing things together, means that your fiber is going to be much more dense. It's going to be concentrated. So you're going to see that it's not as fluffy and lofty, which means that it's not going to be as wide a diameter for knitting purposes, crochet purposes, whatever. So when it comes to your finer fibers like Angora rabbit, Angora rabbit is very, very fine. It has a very fine diameter. To get 4 ounces of Angora, it's a giant pile to make a 4 ounce by weight pile of Angora fiber. And that means that you are going to have a lot more yardage, because you have a lot more volume to work with. So how much your fiber weighs really does matter. Hey Bev, nice to see you. So when you are thinking about projects, what does that mean? If you're a knitter, what that means is you need to worry less about the gram weight or ounce weight total for a project. You need to worry more about the yardage weight. Now, a lot of old patterns are going to be written in something like, 2 ounces of fingering weight wool, and that's great. But that fingering weight wool might be 200 yards, it might be 180 yards, it might be 300 yards to the 2 ounces, because the ounce weight doesn't really tell us the length, how much length you need to knit something. And that's the really, really important thing. So when you are going to your projects page and you're looking at projects, it's far more important to get, if you're substituting yarns, to get a yarn that has the same or more yardage than it is to get a yarn that weighs the same. So you can have a 100-gram skein of yarn that's 300 yards, or a 100-gram skein that's 280 yards. And that's a 20-yard difference. That can make or break your project. So it's something that you really need to pay attention to when you are choosing yarns or substituting yarns. That also applies to things like, say you have a worsted weight and you don't want to knit it in you have this worsted weight pattern that you really love. It's this sweater. It's fabulous. It has cables. Who knows? Right? Something that's going to eat a bunch of yarn, bunch of cables. And it's worsted weight. And that's great, but you don't have any worsted weight in your stash, but you have this really, really lovely DK weight or sport weight. If you can match the yardage and match the gauge, it's essentially going to be the same sweater. Now, if your gauge doesn't match, because that's where it comes into making swatches, swatches are very important. If your gauge does not match, then it's probably going to take more yardage, because usually what happens is when we use a lighter weight yarn, then we may get 6 stitches per inch instead of 5 stitches per inch, and that changes things. So we'll end up using more yarn. That's how that works. That's why it works. That's the magic of being able to substitute yarns and knowing what your gauge is and how gauge plays into yardage. So I wanted to talk about all that. I hope I didn't really confuse anybody with my discussion today. But that's why it's so important when you are looking at your yarns or you're looking at patterns that the designer has listed a fiber content, whether it's 100% superwash wool or whether it's 80% BFL and 20% silk. That's a really, really important little tidbit of information with a crochet pattern, a knit pattern, even with a weaving pattern. It's a really important tidbit of information. Your patterns should always list as precisely as possible the fiber content and yardage for all of your skeins, as well as the, it doesn't have to say fingering weight yarn or whatever, but you should be able to find the yarn brand so that you can compare it. Because for something like this, which, remember, this is the Elroy shawl. This is silk and sea cell. And I think it was a 100-gram ball of the silk and sea cell. There we go, right? And this is, I don't know, 775 meters or something in the full ball. Or 700 meters and it's 775 yards, whatever it is. This is a ton of yardage right here. This is a ton of yardage. But in a 100-gram skein of silk, because silk is lighter than the sea cell, then you're going to have more yardage. So in 100 grams of silk that is spun the same way, you're going to get more yardage. And that's a really important thing to know. It's a very important thing to know. So if someone, would put the sea lace on their pattern, they need to list that they used sea lace and it's 70% silk and 30% sea cell, because that matters. That matters to your pattern. And not only that, but it matters to the drape of your pattern. If you are using silk or sea cell, then you are going to have more drape and flow. You aren't going to have as much drape and flow in a pattern that is using wool. And so if you've decided that, I'm going to take this really awesome lace pattern that's meant for a 2-ply Shetland wool that's 800 yards to 4 ounces or whatever, it's going to be bouncier and springier, and it's not going to drape as much as the same pattern would be knit in silk or a silk and sea cell blend. I mean, that's just something that's really important to think about. So when you're looking at your patterns, always check for the fiber content, the weight of the skein if it's listed. It is an important thing to know. The yardage, the yarn brand. I try to put as much detail on the front of my patterns as possible so that you are armed with the information to be able to substitute. Because substituting is really fun, right? It's really fun to be able to take a yarn that's already in your stash and knit this fabulous pattern and make them, make them into a new thing. So just keep in mind that finer diameter fibers take up more volume to equal the same weight as larger diameter fibers. That's the key takeaway here. So it's always important to make sure that you know the fiber content and the yardage on your patterns. Whew! That was a lecture. Okay, now let's look at the fun stuff. Some other things I wanted to talk about today. So remember, I have set up a beginning tatting course. It starts Friday night. I don't have any students yet, so right now, if somebody signs up, you might get a one-on-one course with me. So if you're interested in learning beginning shuttle tatting, then that's available on the website. Remember to go to blacksheepfiberemporium.com and you can see classes and events. Click on classes. All of our classes will be listed there. I talked to Tina today. Again, part of why I was late. And we are going to be adding more classes to that list. I talked to her about doing the beginning knitting and beginning crochet. I am going to be adding a beginning lace. So this is my beginner's lace book, the If You Can Knit, You Can Knit lace. I'm going to add an intermediate lace course, which is my lace knitting beyond the basics. So that's the next one up. I'm going to add a beginning Estonian lace course. And then I'm probably going to do a Shetland lace course. So each month we're going to be progressing further into lace for a while, and then I'll switch to something else. And Tina, she's going to start with the beginning knitting and beginning crochet, and then I'm not sure where she's going from there, but she'll be teaching something else. Hopefully she'll do a needle felting, because I think that's really fun. I would take Tina's needle felting course because I haven't made much needle felting stuff. So I would totally do that. Let's see, I'm still working on my year of self-care stuff. Let me grab them. And I finished all of my skeins, but I have not washed them. But yay, they're all spun. Look at this. They're all spun. So this was the first one that I did. Does anybody want a peanut? And then this was Never Rush a Miracle Man. This one, the purple and the green didn't come through as much as I thought they would in this one. So I may not end up using this one in my sweater because it's kind of the outlier. And then the next one I did was this one, which is To Blave. And I really, really like this one. I think it's going to go great with that peanut. And then this was the last one that I did for this series. And this is I Will Always Come For You. And I think they turned out fabulous. They're 3-ply. I dropped a mini skein. I made a couple of mini skeins of the leftovers. So this was kind of the leftovers from the first two. This is the leftovers from the second two. And I was going to do the sweater kind of like this, but this one doesn't go as well. So I have so much yardage, which is part of why I wanted to talk about yardage, from this BFL and silk. So the BFL is a little higher diameter, which means that it's a little bit wider fiber, but the silk does help to lighten that up. And I still ended up with 450 plus yards on all of these skeins for 3-ply yarn, which I'm very happy with. So this is like at least 1,350 yards, which is plenty to make a sweater for me. A nice lightweight sweater for me, probably on some 3s, but I have to swatch it because you should always swatch. And I have to wash this. This might end up puffing up a little bit, so I might end up with a little fluffier yarn after I wash this. So I might be able to use 4s. That was kind of where I wanted to go was 4s, but we'll see. So that is the first of my goals for my year of self-care. And if you haven't joined in, don't forget Tina is running a couple of contests, and all you have to do is lay out your goals for the year. You don't have to make the goals. You just have to post your goals for the year, and there are downloadable PDFs that you can either handwrite or, you know, if you have a program, you can go type in the goals for each month. On the webpage, you just go to blacksheepfiberemporium.com, and that Crafter's Year of Self-Care is plastered all over the front. And we have a special page where you can link it off of that classes and events. You can find the Year of Self-Care, and she's having a contest. All you have to do is just lay out your goals. Again, you don't have to actually finish your goals. You just have to tell us what you want to do. So, you know, that's like the best part. Okay, I gotta put this down because it's just like, taking up all the space. There we go. Much better. And let's see. What else do I want to tell you about? So I have classes coming up. I'm working on my year of self-care. What else was on my year of self-care list for January? Just spinning for my sweater. So managed my goal. So since my spinning was done for my sweater, although I do still have to wash that, remember, have to wash it, have to finish your yarn. It's not set and finished until it's washed. I am also working on, and I'm going to give you a sneak peek, so don't tell anybody else. Okay, tell a few people. Sneak peek of our design for the slow crawl. The slow crawl is coming. You can pre-order your passports now. Just mentioning that. They're available on the Slow Crawl website. I'll be putting them back up on the Black Sheep website soon. But yeah, passports, Slow Crawl, it's coming. So this is a piece that I am working on, stranded color work. It's going to be sort of a cape or a poncho. And I'm making the medium/large size. Right now I have it in 3 sizes, but I'm going to add a 4th. So hopefully there'll be 4 sizes before everything's said and done. And I'm working this. So you work it from the neck down. So I've just kind of started with, you know, a regular yoked neck, and we're going to go down. And I love how my colors are coming together. This is the Studio Donegal Darnie. I've got 5 different colors. I finally got to the garnet, which I think is really making this pop. Look at this. Look at how awesome this is. See this? So cool. Loving how this is coming out. Look at my pretty floats. Love my floats. So really enjoying this. And I'm enjoying it so much that I thought Wednesday I want to show you how I do my combined knitting, where I combine continental and Portuguese knitting into one. And I run one color, my dominant color, my background color, continental, and I run my second color, Portuguese, around my neck. And then this bowl was actually my grandmother's. And you know, it's not exactly a pretty bowl, but it was hers, and it makes me think of her. And so I've been using this as my little yarn bowl to hold my second ball so that the cat and my child don't take off with it as easily when I'm knitting. So anyway, Wednesday, that's what I want to show you, is how to do what I call portunental knitting. If there's interest, I am happy to put a class on the books to do that as well. Super fun to do. You run continental off of one hand, and then you run the Portuguese off the other and around your neck. And it makes for really fast color work. It's the fastest I have ever been able to work color work. And honestly, I've only spent 3 hours, I think. 3 hours doing this, maybe a little bit less, because it just goes so fast. It just goes so fast. And I'm adding like tons of stitches every few inches too. I'm adding like 40 stitches every 2 inches. It's a lot of stitches. So, and I'm still keeping up the pace because it just makes it so much faster. So Wednesday, that's what I want to show you, is more about my portunental knitting. So how to combine continental and Portuguese into great color work knitting. And as we know, I do quite like my color work because I've talked about it a lot in the past. And I want to share it with you. I want to share it with all of you. So anyway, that's kind of the plan. Next week then, I'll be back on Monday. Wednesday, I may not be here. I think that's Wednesday the 20th because I have to have some dental work done. I actually like broke my crown in half, and so I've been to the dentist once, and I have to go back, and they found a cavity, which is lovely, right? Ugh, cavities. So I have to go have some dental work done on the 20th and the 21st. So there's a good chance that I will probably not be here that afternoon. So I'll either share an old video or I'll, you know, put up some pictures of what I've been doing instead. But Wednesday I'm going to talk about the portunental knitting. When the next Monday, so Monday the 18th. What should we talk about Monday the 18th? We could do tatting. It's been a while since I've done more tatting. I really like my tatting. Yeah, why not? Let's just schedule some tatting for the afternoon of the 18th. Maybe we'll talk about putting beads in tatting, or I can do sort of a little little motif or something. We'll do some tatting. That's what we're going to do on Monday the 18th. So anyway, I hope that everyone will join me. I'm going to start putting up some events so that you know that my talks are coming up. You'll probably see them about a week to 2 weeks ahead of time as we settle on our topics here. Don't forget that Tina does her talks on Fridays. She's doing some dyeing today, so I told her she had to take photos, period. Photos were required. And preferably some short videos if she could manage that too. So hopefully she'll post some of those for you so everybody can see that as well. Yeah, so lots of fun stuff coming up. Slow Crawl is coming. Get all your friends excited about it. I'll be posting more about Slow Crawl as we start getting into towards the end of the month. I'm super excited about all of the patterns that are coming for that. I'm really enjoying the ones that I've been making. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you? Dyeing classes. Yeah, I think I've covered most of it. Don't forget that if you are not a huge fan of Facebook, you can find us on YouTube. We also post to Instagram pretty regularly and TikTok, so you can find us in all of those various places. And until next time, do please take care of yourself. Stay happy, stay healthy, keep crafting, take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. Make sure that you're doing something enjoyable every day, preferably crafty, because crafting really makes me feel a lot better. Even if it's just 15 minutes, crafting usually makes me feel a lot better. And yeah, we're going to come up with more topics, and it'll be a lot of fun. So I hope you'll join me again on Wednesday for a little bit of portunental knitting. So I'll see you then.